Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan, and I'm here with Pete. Hey, Pete.
How are you doing?
I'm great. What's the topic of the day?
We've got a special drop episode today. There is currently a holiday in the UAE, which has prevented cinemas from releasing movies as they normally would be released. So for the next couple weeks, I have the upper hand on Ethan in terms of movies and their release dates.
Enjoy it while it lasts, my friend. You get 1 month. You get 1 month out of the year to see movies before I do.
I know.
In this case, it's a big deal. We're talking about JW4, John Wick 4.
Yesterday, I watched John Wick Chapter 4 or John Wick 4 Chapter whatever it is. I don't know. They keep changing up the titles and different locations. But anyway, it's the fourth John Wick movie.
So, as we always do when we do a big review, we do a little bit of the scene setting.
Yeah.
So before I ask you about this, let me tell you what I've done. Because the first John Wick came out in 2014, believe it or not. And I know I've seen John Wick. And I know I've seen John Wick 2, but I don't feel like I saw it in a cinema because I only remember bits and pieces. I've never seen John Wick 3, Parabellum, right?
Exactly.
Which means prepare for war in Latin, I learned. So I actually rewatched all three of the John Wicks, knowing that I would not see 4, but you would see 4. So at least I could hold my part of the conversation and the history leading up to these things. And I have to say, they were more engaging than I expected watching 3 movies back to back to back would be. The fight scenes are amazing, first of all.
They still hold up, yeah?
Still hold up. Absolutely hold up. But I have to say, like, there was some time that I had a little bit of fight fatigue. And what really captivated more than the action was the storyline. I thought was way more compelling than I gave it credit for. And I was actually more interested in the story. The fight scenes, I was kind of like, not yawn, but kind of like, all right, this is going to go on for 5 minutes. It's going to be amazing. He's going to stab everybody, shoot everybody, beat everybody down in new and inventive ways. I respect it, but come on, like, let's move on with the story. I want to see what happens, you know?
Yeah, which is something that I think most people were pleasantly surprised by, right?
Yeah.
You would not expect a movie helmed by a stunt choreographer, essentially,
right,
to do what John Wick has done, which is to say, yeah, the fighting is great, the choreography is unbelievable, but where does this go next?
Kind of the opposite of Transformers, right?
Oh,
Transformers,
100%.
Which has almost an indecipherable, if any, plot, relying only on Michael Bay type things.
You could watch that movie on mute and get as much information out of it as you would if you watched it in Dolby Atmos.
I'm telling you, Transformers would be a great one for the mom test. To be like, okay, mom, you just watched this movie, summarize the plot. And she'd be like, robots fighting.
Yeah, like that Walkman destroyed that Chevy.
Maybe in Chicago, maybe in Hong Kong. Not sure.
I'm pretty sure there's a pyramid in there, so they must have been in Egypt at some point.
All right, back to JW4. You saw it in cinemas. I have not. The first time we've ever done an emergency recap where we're only half seen it. Tell me what the cinema was like. Tell me what your mindset, enthusiasm were going in.
So I did see it on a Monday, and I gotta say, for a Monday evening, pretty busy.
Wow.
Shockingly so. It was not what I would have expected, but I can't really fault them because it was also a Monday night.
Yeah.
The composition of the crowd was surprisingly diverse.
Did it have a good opening, do you know?
Unbelievable. $75 million domestic and $150 million global, plus minus. In one weekend, John Wick out-earned all of Shazam has done so far.
Now more than ever, I blame the bad opening on Shazam to DC maybe intentionally submarining that movie. If 2 weeks later, Wick opened like this, again, there's nothing that is out there. It's not a holiday season.
And John Wick is a hard movie because it
Yeah,
is not a PG movie. It is a
that's
hard
not, yeah,
R, right?
yeah,
It is complicated. There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of stabbing. There's a lot of shooting.
yeah.
That is not a movie that is geared to your 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, or families.
It's also not a date night movie, right?
I mean, it could be, but like, I don't see it.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, by the way, I thought John Wick 4 had better moments of levity than all of Shazam.
So I feel like I already know that you're going to give this an amazing grade. Is that right?
This is Ethan, I think you need to take a flight out of Dubai to watch this movie and come back. That's how good I think this movie is. It's awesome. It is a must watch in cinemas for a variety of reasons, all of which I'm happy to go through.
Yes, go through. Where we just last left off with Wick 3 Parabellum, the whole world, or like every assassin, right? Underground assassin is after him, right?
That's right. Wick 1 was very simple. It was introducing John Wick. His car gets stolen, his dog gets killed, and he goes on a revenge mission.
Right.
Wick 2 picks up the same night that Wick 1 ends, more or less. It's about him, a marker being called in, so that means he has to do, he has to return the favor that he did, that somebody did for him.
Right.
He goes on a killing spree at the behest of someone, gets stabbed in the back.
Yep. Kills the dude's sister in Rome, comes back, finds out he's double-crossed, fights his way out of it, and it ends with him killing the dude in the Continental being a violation.
That causes him to be hunted by the entire society because you're not allowed to do business on the Continental.
Then 3 picks up where he's in the rain right after 2. And everyone is after him. And then at the end of 3, we see him supposedly shot, but then picked up by some dude working for the Bowery King, Lawrence Fishburne. And he basically says, now I'm going to get everybody.
Exactly.
And that's where 4 starts.
So the great thing about these movies is that theoretically, John Wick 1, 2, and then 3 take place one right after the other. Like it could be no more than a week in between.
Matter of days, Right.
And John Wick 4 picks up, I'd say probably like a couple weeks to maybe a month after, in the sense that because he's been injured very badly at the end of 3.
Right.
It opens with him basically getting back into fighting shape.
Like Batman, The Dark Knight Rises, right?
Almost, actually very similar. Let me give you the premise, and I'm going to give a rare spoiler alert, not just for the audience, but also for Ethan.
For your co-host.
Now, here's the crazy thing. This is a John Wick movie, so in terms of spoilers, it's not like there's some intricate plot. It's not like there's some crazy machinations going on here. At the end of the day, the premise is simple. Keanu Reeves is given a pistol and he has to basically go through the whole world. The premise of the movie is that he has decided, okay, the only way for this to end once and for all is for him to destroy the leadership of this underworld. And so his goal is to kill everyone at what's called the high table, which is like, you know, this conceptually, this group of 12 leaders or whatever it is who control all of the underworld.
Right.
That's how he starts the movie. Over the course of the movie, it's hammered into him that killing everyone isn't going to solve anything because other people are just going to end up replacing the people that he kills.
Right.
You can't destroy the system because they're so ingrained in society that there's no point in just killing everyone. So you have to use the system to save yourself because it's impossible to break the system.
Okay.
He has to then find out what the rules are, and he learns that he can initiate a duel. Like he can throw down a challenge with whoever's chasing after him. And if he wins that challenge or that duel, all of the vendettas are gone. And he basically wipes his slate clean.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's basically what happens. So that's the premise / plot. And it's a little tumultuous that it gets there, but that's effectively what happens.
Okay. In 3, they had the lady from Billions, the adjudicator. What is her name? Asia
Kate Dillon.
Is she in this?
She is not.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah. So you raise a good point. So a lot of returning characters come in.
Yeah.
But I was a bit disappointed to see that a lot of others didn't. So, because she played a relatively significant part in
that's
3.
what I thought.
And then at the same time, at the end of number 2, or not the end, but in number 2, we also saw Common, right? He was the bodyguard of the woman who was killed.
But Common died, right?
No, but he didn't. He just got stabbed in the heart. And then the whole point was that what John Wick also did to the Bowery King, but he lived because he basically told him to leave the knife in, and he was able to get saved. And that was the courtesy that John Wick did for the Bowery King, was leaving the knife inside him. And that's what he does to Common as well. So I thought that Common was going to come back for one of the sequels.
Nope.
But clearly not. Also, in the course of the movie, the New York Continental gets deconsecrated because they accuse Ian McShane of working with John Wick, and to send a message to all the other Continental hotels and all the other agents of the underworld.
Right.
They don't just deconsecrate the hotel, but they destroy it. Like literally they use explosives and they have like a demolition of the hotel.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the main bad guy in this movie who replaces Asia Kate Dillon is Bill Skarsgård.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he's called the Marquis. And the Marquis is effectively the hitman that the High Table has hired to take out John Wick. And they've given him free reign to do anything and everything to get him. And his point is, we have to overreact because we want to send a message to the rest of the world that John Wick is not someone that can be trifled with.
Right.
So they destroy the New York Continental. We get to see the Osaka Continental. So this is the third one we've seen. We've seen the New York Continental. In the sequel, we saw the Rome Continental. Now in the fourth one, we see the Osaka Continental. I'm going to take a second to pause here. By and far, the most visually stunning of all of the John Wick movies.
Oh, really?
If you need proof of that, you just need to see the Osaka Continental. It is gorgeous. Like what they've done, kudos to the writers, kudos to Chad Stahelski. All these guys, what they've done is they've created a mythology that is not to be trifled with. It is unbelievable what they've done. The mythos that they've built over 4 films is, I think, some of the best world building we've seen in any franchise. And I do mean that. I would put it up there with Star Wars, with Star Trek, and with all these other sci-fi franchises that have storied universes that either they know intimately or they're vaguely aware of. So even if you're not a Star Wars fan, you know Darth Vader is a big bad, right?
Right.
And you understand that this takes place in a universe and that there are Jawas and Ewoks and all these other creatures. I think Chad Stahelski and his team have done the same thing for John Wick, which is to say that they have built a world that happens to exist on Earth, but this underworld and this mythology that is on that same level as these other fictional universes we've seen, which is to say, I think they're epic, I think they're iconic, and I think they've got such a unique style to them that other people will see them, and when they see that, they'll understand where they
are. I have to say, I fully agree with you, even not seeing JW4.
Yeah.
It's what I said, I think, at the outset, which is when I watched 1, 2, and 3, it was the order and the protocols of the underworld that I found so captivating. You know, they really made it seem realistic that, say, I can imagine someone with all these tattoos and all these piercings kind of wanting a job that's a little bit more traditional, but yet they're not going to apply to a normal multinational company online. This is the type of job that they would have doing bookkeeping for an underworld company. That seems realistic.
To be a phone operator, simple things. And that's exactly right. And what I really like is they don't hold our hands.
Right.
In the first movie, they introduced the Continental. Mm-hmm. They introduced the gold coins, the payment system.
Yep.
And they don't explain a thing.
Right.
They don't tell us that you can only use gold coins here.
Right.
They don't have these, rules written out for you. They show everything to you.
Yeah.
And in every movie thereafter, they build on that. So we learn that the systems that are in place in this world, the rules, the hierarchy, the mythos building that they've done, they do not hold our hands, and they just kind of show it to you.
Right.
And there's a little bit of exposition where it's absolutely necessary, but beyond that,
I agree.
They don't hold your hand, which is why, there's supposed to be like a couple different spin-offs coming out from this. I'm excited for all of them.
So what are the spin-offs? The Continental's a spin-off.
The Continental, which is supposed to have been coming out at the end of this year, but who knows, which is, I think, based on just the hotel. Ana de Armas is creating a spin-off called The Ballerinas. And do you remember The Ballerinas with Angelica Houston in episode 3?
Yep, I do.
So they're coming back as well. And in fact, I read in an article today, Keanu Reeves reprises his role as John Wick in The Ballerinas.
Is there a John Wick 5? Do we know?
Officially, nothing right now, because I think both Chad and Keanu are kind of like, we need to take a break.
Yeah.
Because all these, think about it, in 10 years, 4 movies have come out. It's a lot. Yeah. My feeling was that they were going to say no, but I think based on how much money this movie made this last week, I expect that there will be some kind of movie. Whether it's a prequel, whether it's a sequel, who knows?
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil the ending of this movie for you. It's put in such a position where if they don't want to do a sequel, they don't have to. But if they want to do a sequel, I think they could. Yeah. In fact, I'm quite confident they could.
Okay.
Again, I have to reiterate this because genuinely, I believe this with all my heart. One of the best examples of mythos building and world building I have seen in a cinematic universe. And it's done so artfully that it leaves you wanting to see more and to learn more about it.
So I think those are kind of really the 2 or 3 great hallmarks of the John Wick franchise. When it was coming out, it was a little bit underestimated, and it took at least half a movie to kind of get its feet, right? But the one is the world building and the mythos of the underworld, the organization that they've put into organized crime. The second is obviously the action sequences, the choreography, the fighting. And I think the second part of that is the long cuts, right? This and that other movie, Atomic Blonde, for me, spring to mind as the 2 movies, Wick is a franchise, that have really used like these long action sequences with intense choreography with no cuts. Single camera following the action, right?
If you were already kind of not bored, but maybe kind of like looking forward to the fights ending in the other movies, I think this is going to be a problem for you in this movie. Because
long scenes, I bet,
first of all, this is the longest movie in the franchise. It's almost 3 hours long.
Whoa, no way.
Yeah, it's 2 hours, 50 minutes long.
Babylon style.
And I have to say, I didn't time it, but I'm willing to bet an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 of that was fight sequences.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm not joking. 3 to 4 major fight sequences in the movie. Yeah. And I kid you not, each fight sequence, the shortest one was 20, 25 minutes long. You heard that right. 20 to 30 minutes long.
And they're single cuts, right?
Not single cut at all. It's just not possible.
But they're long cuts, right?
Kudos to the director of photography, to the cinematographers. Yeah. They didn't use what Jason Bourne made famous. Jason Bourne used shaky cam a lot.
Yeah.
So shaky cam, the advantage of shaky cam is that it feels more realistic.
Yeah.
And when an actor or a stunt guy gets hit in shaky cam, it feels a little bit more visceral because the camera is shaking. So it's like you are moving with it. Here,
I mean, can we just take a moment there? You pointed something really important out. And it's one of the things that I think made Bourne such a success at the time, which is we were so used to these James Bond, really clean fight scenes where, you know, his tux was perfectly pressed, and then he went back to, I mean, this changed with
he never got punched in the
Casino
face.
Royale. Yeah. And then Bourne came, and the shaky cam really shook things up, so to speak. And it totally different perspective of like an agent or a spy and how they really get dirty and roll up their sleeves, right?
Yeah, it's the same reason why I think a lot of people liked the action in Casino Royale with Daniel Craig, was because it was the first time we see James Bond get down and dirty.
Lead. The first time we saw him like even get a bloody nose, right?
Exactly, which is what, and I think a lot of that came from Jason Bourne.
Oh yeah.
Here, what they've done with the cinematography and with the camera work is no shaky cam. Everything is clean, crystal clear. But the action sequences are so visceral with the sound effects, with the visual effects, and most importantly, because the stunt guys and because Keanu Reeves, everyone who throws a punch or fires a gun in this movie has spent serious time training, and you can see it. What they've done is, without the shaky cam, without the quick cuts, they've got 20, 30-minute long fights, seriously, that don't seem like they end. And because there's no shaky cam, it's very cleanly shot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from that, because the cinematographers trusted that the stuntmen knew what they were doing, that Keanu Reeves knows what he's doing, that all these actors are actually capable, and they are. So what you get is you get to see all of the action crystal clear, and it is unbelievable. It is some of the best choreography and fight sequences I've ever seen in any movie, period. It felt like a video game with God mode enabled.
After Wick, what do you think, what movie or what franchise do you think is the second best choreographed fight scenes? I think Atomic Blonde was fantastic because those were also very, very long cuts.
Yeah, I would say if we're going to step away from superhero movies, because superhero movies, I think, rely a little bit too much on visual effects. Up until the John Wick movies, probably the Jason Bourne / Daniel Craig era Bond films had the best action sequences. Like, the fights felt real.
Yeah, you're right. The Daniel Craig Bond scenes were quite good. I think there's a few other movies that had very limited good scenes, but not the extended choreography that we've seen in Bourne, in the recent Daniel Craig Bond, and I also really do think Atomic Blonde was quite good in that as well. Very good. Yeah.
And then if you're looking at superhero movies where they didn't have superpowers necessarily, I thought that Black Widow, I thought Scarlett Johansson's fight scenes were also very well coordinated.
Correct.
Because I think she used the advantages that her body style and body type is, which was less reliant on strength and more on acrobatics.
Yeah.
And so those action sequences were kind of like jaw-dropping for different reasons, right? Like, it's always fun to see Captain America punch Thanos in the face.
Yeah.
But I would much rather see Black Widow take down one of the bad guys by kind of like jumping over him and twisting herself around and doing all the stuff she did.
Yeah, I think you're right on that list. But you're saying this is just at a different level.
This is, honestly, this is like, no joke, this is like professional versus amateur hour. They have taken gun fu and fight choreography, especially in 4. Like, every movie has kind of upped their game in terms of the action, but this one, honestly, this is why I think it was the magnum opus, is the fight choreography, the scenery and set design. I mean, totally chef's kiss. Not just one of the best. You know what? I'm throwing it down. I'm calling it now. It's the best. I don't think we've seen anything better.
Have you read anything or seen anything in terms of like how Keanu and his fight co-stars train or prep or
Oh
how
yeah.
often?
So Keanu Reeves famously attended like this gun range slash training school.
Yeah.
And you can like look it up on YouTube. I'm telling you, if you put a real gun in Keanu Reeves' hand, I think he could take down anybody.
Hmm.
He just spent hours and weeks and months training like crazy. There's videos of him before the third movie came out training with Halle Berry
Hmm.
because, you know, Halle Berry had some
That's right.
unbelievable action sequences in the
Yeah,
third as
that's
well.
right.
The training the two of them did side by side, I mean, honestly, like you might as well throw them into the special forces, you know, for the US military. It's crazy how much they work.
I mean, it's really incredible. I mean, when you think about those movies, I mean, you said something that's so interesting, which is I have no idea what the budget is for those movies. I mean, they're not cheap, but even though they're filmed, they may not be super expensive to make because, as you said, there's a fight scene, 3 fight scenes is half the movie, and those fight scenes take place basically, I don't know where they take place in this movie, on a rooftop, in a basement, in a hotel lobby, right? I mean, those are extended portions of the movie. You know, there's some movies that, you know, are very expensive because they keep jet setting all over the place and they've got a short scene here and a short scene there,
They
right?
do here as well.
Yeah.
They do here as well. So they have upped it as well. So I think a significant portion of the movie takes place in Paris
Hmm.
and the starts off kind of like halfway between New York and half the time in Osaka.
Yeah.
Did they actually shoot in Paris, Osaka, and New York? Probably not.
Yeah.
So you're right in the sense that because, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is that the fights themselves are quite localized, which is to
Yeah.
say it's
Right.
not a fight that starts off in a warehouse and ends in an airfield.
Yeah.
It starts in a warehouse and ends in a warehouse. It
Right.
starts in a nightclub, it ends in a nightclub.
Yeah.
It doesn't go like over
Yeah.
crazy distances. And that's true here as well. So you
Yeah.
could theoretically, you're right. You know, if you have a big enough set, you could probably design all of these in one place.
I think also one of the hallmarks of the Wick series is instead of going big, you know, they're not the type of people that have a fist fight in the middle of like an airport runway with jets flying around. That's like a Mission Impossible type thing. Here it's like they're in like a cuckoo clock store and John Wick, you know, like finds all these ways to like kill people with like a bunch of cuckoo clocks around him, right?
And
It's
repairing
like
the gun at the same time.
exactly.
Yeah. So
Like they actually go more local. I think that's what's so cool about the Wick is that they're like, look, the guy's just in like a tie store, a belt store, like something, a grocery store, right? And look at
he's
what
the
he can.
master improviser when it comes
Yes.
to killing,
Yes.
basically.
Exactly.
I will say that changes tremendously in episode 4.
Oh, they go big.
Now it's not localized that way. Like
Mm.
they have a fight sequence inside a hotel museum, effectively. They have a fight sequence inside a nightclub. It's quite epic. And then the fight scene, the one that I really want to talk about the most actually is they have a fight on the streets of Paris.
Okay.
It's an elongated fight that leads towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Let's go over some of the small gripes that I had. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, the main bad guy, Bill Skarsgård, what
Mhm.
really annoyed me is you are living in a world that's super fancy, right? And super swish. It looks sexy. There's bright colored neons. The world looks like Cyberpunk 2077. If you've ever played the video game, it's unbelievable. Lots of beautiful contrasts of colors, very bright. You know, it's just awesome. Money is not an object in this world. Gold coins are, but money itself, like everyone has got millions of dollars, right? I mean, John Wick has a bounty on his head for $20 million. It goes up to like 50 by the end of the movie, whatever it is. It's a motivating factor, but it's not like it's a scarce resource, especially to the leaders, right? I mean, you've got guys who own hotels in New York, Osaka, Rome. What's $20 million to someone like that?
Right.
The Marquis, the guy who's basically in charge with getting John Wick, in the middle of that last fight, is negotiating with a hitman on the bounty for John Wick's head. Like he's griping and negotiating. The guy wants 45 or $40 million and he's offering 20. Like it's maybe they did that to show the leverage of power between the marquee versus the low hitman.
Yeah.
But it comes off as petty, if that makes sense. Like, you're a guy who's got a massive French estate. You're worth billions of dollars. What is $20 million or $40 million? That it's not even your money, first of all. Second of all, you started the movie by destroying a hotel in New York, and your point was, we're sending a message. Mm-hmm. So if you're sending a message, what is $20 million versus $50 million? Right? It's nonsense. The bigger problem I had is that because this movie now has to get to a point where everything has to get a little bit to the next level, right? Mm-hmm. Some of the action choices and action sequences veered into straight up comedy. Oh. John is having a fight in what looks like this derelict church in Paris. And to end the fight, he literally jumps out of the third floor window and lands on top of a car. When that happened, people in the cinema started laughing because of how ridiculous it was that he just kind of got up and walked it off. Like, you don't jump 30 meters off the side of a building, land on top of a car, almost destroy the car, and then walk away. You're not Captain America. Yeah. Like, I could see that in an Avengers movie. I cannot expect that in a John Wick movie. Yeah. And they kind of explained that away in the second John Wick movie when he meets the tailor and they talk about how these suits are now bulletproof, which again, obviously is ridiculous, but that's fine because that's part of the fantastical mythos of this world. But in this movie, he's shrugging off shotgun shots at like 3 feet apart because he's got his suit on. Kind of silly, if you know what I mean. And then right after that fight, he has another fight on the streets of Paris where people are having breakfast at like 4:00 in the morning on the sidewalk and cars are running into him. He's running into cars. Guns are being drawn. Bullets are flying. And the people are just sitting there enjoying their breakfast. No screaming. That fight goes on into the Arc de Triomphe on the roundabout at the end of Champs-Élysées. Yeah. And traffic is going full speed and people aren't like, they're on the ground. They're not in cars. They're on the ground shooting at each other between cars flying at them at the roundabout. Oh. That would never happen. Like, of course, cars would stop. Everyone would freak out. Yeah. They had a fight sequence in a nightclub. And what's funny is, like, when I see sequences like that, I always look at the extras to see what they're doing. Yeah. There was one extra I couldn't take my eyes off. She sees John Wick take an axe and shove it into a guy's skull, literally split a guy's skull open. Yeah. She stops dancing. The guy falls to the floor and then she continues dancing again right after. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's moments like that, which is, again, I know you're not supposed to be making the most realistic movie. I get that. That's totally fine. But this is what I mean by saying this veered into the arena of either comedy or nonsense. Yeah. I don't expect everyone is to behave perfectly the same. But, I mean, in the first movie, when he goes to the bathhouse and he does a firefight, everybody runs when they hear the first bullet. And in this movie,
the second one where he's in Rome, everyone is running out of that club as well. Yeah.
Out of that club. And here, they're all still dancing. They're all still dancing. They've seen literally 15, 20 guys die on the dance floor in front of them. And they're still dancing and raving like they're all on drugs of some kind. Yeah. So those are the small, minor gripes. Is I think that, in the pursuit of taking this action sequences to the next level, they kind of veered into ridiculous territory. Yeah. Cast. Let's talk about the cast.
Let's talk about the cast.
Excellent. This is the last performance, rest in peace, of Lance Reddick. Ian McShane was, great as usual. Lawrence Fishburne was hamming it up. He was very good.
I don't know. I didn't love his character, the Bowery King. Maybe he's better in this one, but
No, it's not that. It's more of the same. It's more of him just being over the top.
Overacting.
Yeah, a little bit. Bill Skarsgård as the bad guy, or as the ultimate bad guy, was, in my opinion, so-so. He was so-so, like, He was a bad guy, but like almost like a comic book villain bad guy. Like,
Oh no.
and I mean that by the original comic books, not like the movies that we see today. The movies we see today, like even the super villains like Thanos, etc., you can empathize with them. You understand there's a sense of pathos. You didn't get any of that with this guy. He was just
Oh,
bad.
really?
He was just
Good.
flat out bad.
It's good to have a good bad guy every once in a while, you know?
Yeah. So I think the empathetic slash guy who gives a lot of pathos is actually the other bad guy in this movie who plays a bad guy but isn't really a bad guy, Donnie Yen.
Oh.
Donnie Yen, you will probably remember certainly from Rogue One.
I do remember him in Rogue One, yeah.
Same here. He plays another blind guy.
Oh, really?
He plays a blind assassin in this movie.
Oh, man. He's getting typecast now.
Very good. I mean, first of all, Donnie Yen, other people will know him from Ip Man. Unbelievable action sequences. One of the best action actors, rivaling, if not surpassing, Jackie Chan in a lot of ways. He was used very, very well and effectively in this movie. You felt bad for him because he's a victim of circumstance in this movie. He's not a bad guy because he chooses to be bad. He has to be the bad guy because he has a marker out on him that he has to also basically do.
Okay.
He fulfills that role very well. I thought he was very good. That's it. There was one other main character, Tracker. He calls himself Mr. Nobody in this movie. I don't know the actor. He slightly resembles John David Washington, but not quite. There's a similarity there.
Yeah.
He's got a German Shepherd with him in this movie. So you get to see some great action sequences with the dog as well.
More dogs. Yeah.
And I got to say, so I'm going to segue that into one of the fight sequences that I especially want to point out.
Okay.
And this goes back to the cinematography. And he plays a role with that with his dog as well, as does Keanu Reeves. It's the fight sequence in the church. They do something in that fight sequence with the cameras that I have never seen on screen before. I've only ever seen it maybe done on a video game. And it was unbelievable. Quite possibly one of the best things I've ever seen in terms of action sequences.
Oh, man. I've got to see this then.
It's so good. It's I couldn't get over myself when I saw that. Did you ever get that feeling like you start getting goosebumps?
Yeah.
I got goosebumps watching that. It was unreal. I'm not even going to spoil it for you because I want you to see it without me. When you see it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about right now.
Okay.
It's the most thumping moment of the movie for me. Like,
I'm super excited to see this now.
I'm telling you, you can't not see it. In a movie where you see people get shot close up with shotguns, that sequence was even more thumping. Like it was just, I'm still getting goosebumps just thinking about it 24 hours later.
So overall, there's no question about it. This is a must see in cinemas for you.
I think of all the 4 movies, this is probably one of the, I'm not saying the weakest, but probably, I still think the first movie was the best in terms of storyline. I thought it was a small, tightly constructed movie. Storyline made sense. Pure revenge story. That's it. This one, I would say the storyline is just average. I think the action sequences obviously kind of trump it. And then, of course, because this could potentially be the last one in the series if they wanted to, they laid it on a little bit thick with the emotional moments. And in fact, like for a movie that's effectively a neo-noir film, the last fight sequence was a straight up Western, including the music, by the way. It's just a straight up Western. It sounds weird to say, but it worked.
Very sad Asia Kate Dillon is not in it, though. I thought she was great as the adjudicator. I would have really liked to see her as an assassin, you know?
Yeah. It would have been interesting to see her get some action in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, like I know her primarily from Billions at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she plays a hedge fund manager / day trader. She sits behind the desk. She's very smart.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would have been cool to see her doing flips and fighting and using a gun. I think that would have been a very interesting take for her.
I agree. Do you think there's some actors that just like they have kind of a small tryout? They're like, look, you're just not very athletic or you're not good at memorizing choreography. Like, we're just not going to get you there. this role isn't for you, right? I mean, there has to be a tryout process. You can't just ask anybody to train for 3 months and expect that they're all going to be exceptional,
You
right?
say that, but it's not like you need to be super athletic to fire a gun. And
Yeah.
two, in the nightclub fight sequence, John Wick fights a guy who looks like he's easily 300, 400 pounds.
Are there any cameos? Because there's a cameo in an NBA player, Bogan Bogdanovic, I got that name wrong, was the super tall guy who fought him in the library in 3. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do remember. Yeah, we had the wrestler in the first movie who plays the bouncer in front of the bathhouse.
Were there any other cameos here?
Probably, but not that I noticed.
I bet some of the sumo guys were like...
That's the other thing. The cast is also far more international.
Yeah.
So in the Osaka Continental, I'm sure some of them are famous and I just don't know them.
Right.
But no one that stood out to me as a cameo or someone that I recognize. What this movie has done is it has taken violence and action, made it incredibly fluid, and has made it incredibly visceral in a way that hasn't been done in any other franchise before.
Yeah.
You know, probably one of the more famous gun violence scenes was, Sonny Corleone getting taken down in The Godfather with those Tommy guns.
Right.
That never felt visceral. This one, in John Wick, like you feel as if you're getting shot just watching the movie. That's how good the cinematography is. That's how excellent the sound designs are. So I really think that's still the case. In fact, I think more than any other movie.
Yeah. I feel like that's really one of the things that we've seen in Bourne and again in the Daniel Craig Bonds is like what they kind of showed is that, hey, it's not that easy to kill someone. Like people fight back. It's not all headshots. It's not all just come behind them and snap their neck.
Yeah.
Like it's really, really hard to get into a physical fight with someone who's also kind of trained.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's not easy to win. Stuff gets knocked off the wall. Stuff falls over. You get dirty. Everyone gets hurt. It's really not easy. I thought that's what the Bournes and then the Daniel Craig Bonds showed us. Wick is a little bit, I think, hits it on both ends, right? And I've read this really interesting website, and it showed all the kills in each Wick film in terms of how many were headshots, how many missed shots did he have?
Yeah.
And it really broke it down. And there's a lot of headshots, right? And we know that, I mean, despite what you see in movies, it's not easy to pick up someone else's gun that may or may not be calibrated, might not be a big caliber, and hit someone who's running with a perfect headshot and they just die immediately. With a handgun, it's a lot more shoulder wounds and leg wounds and blah, blah, blah.
Right? And they eliminate that here because of the suits, because everyone's wearing bulletproof suits now.
Exactly. So they broke it down on this website. It was just because I'm like, how many people did John Wick kill? Yeah.
I bet his body count is so high.
I think it was like 115 per movie. And then they broke it down per like minute and per fight scene and per blah, blah, blah. How many with his hands, how many with a knife. It was like really, really incredibly detailed, kind of in a creepy way. But Wick is known for, he either kills them cleanly with a headshot, right? People are running around the corner, headshot, he eliminates them, or it's a prolonged knife scene, and eventually, he kills them with a book or a toothbrush or a pencil or something,
My recap is as follows. Story was very meh. It felt like a video game fetch quest. Anyone who plays video games understands. It felt like a filler quest. You go from A to B. When you get to B, there's a small complication. You need to solve that quest before you get to C. There's a small complication. You finish that complication, go to D, and then the movie ends. The game's over. That's kind of what it felt like. Visual effects and cinematography, some of the best I've ever seen, period, bar none. I mean, in terms of choreography, just can't be beat. It just can't be beat. But I still think you're going to watch the movie for the choreography. You're going to watch the movie for the visual effects. You're going to stay to continue watching movies in this franchise and in this universe for the mythology that they've created.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's right. That's probably the element that captivated me the most and the one that I'm looking forward to the most in this one.
I mean, they've made violence and assassinations look so good that you kind of want to be a part of it, if that makes sense.
If we're wrapped up on Wick and you're very clear,
rush out to the cinema. Absolutely.
Do we want to touch on 2 other noteworthy things that happened this week, or do we want to save them for our next episode? And those 2 noteworthy things are, 1, the first episode of Succession dropped, and 2, Kang the Conqueror has been arrested.
Yeah, he got taken down not by Ant-Man, but by the police.
Should we hold those?
Let's save that for this weekend.
Teaser for this weekend.
That's probably a good point. We should talk about that. We can discuss that on our weekend recordings, and hopefully by then we'll also have more information as to what's going on.
Something for the listeners to look forward to.
Indeed.
Stay tuned. Pete, thank you for the unilateral review. I'm super stoked for John Wick 4.
I really can't wait for you to watch it. I think you're going to absolutely love it.
Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us. If you've got any comments or feedback, or you want to agree or disagree with Pete, you know how to reach us. Drop us a DM, drop us a post, drop us a like, drop us a comment, or an email. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Pete.
Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
I know.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.